Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Mandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamstra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. So welcome to chapter 19. So just to review the last two chapters, Rupa Goswami has been presenting Bhava Bhakti. And we said Bhava Bhakti, the purpose of Bhava Bhakti, of our sadhana bhakti, is to awaken this Bhava Bhakti, this very service that is spontaneously eager to serve Krishna in ecstasy. So this is Bhava Bhakti. It is a spontaneous service to Krishna in ecstasy. And we said it is in the perfected platform because one has received the Shuddha Shattva potency of Krishna. And so this is in the perfected platform, whereas sadhana bhakti is in the practice platform. And so this was Bhava Bhakti, and we know that we discussed last time Bhava Bhakti means that Krishna Prema is coming right around the corner. And so Rupa Goswami now is presenting Prema Bhakti. Before that, last week we discussed the 9 characteristics of one who is in Bhava Bhakti, and these very wonderful characteristics of utilizing their time 100% in Krishna's service, not liking to be idle, always reserved and perseverant despite facing obstacles, detached from all material activities, not only detached but indifferent, not obligatorily detached, but actually indifferent to all material attachments. No desire for material respect. It has this hope against hope that Krishna will bestow mercy. Very eager to serve the Lord, this intense desire. Very much attached to chanting of the holy names. Very eager to describe the transcendental qualities of Krishna. And very pleased to live in Vrindavan. So these 9 characteristics of Bhava Bhakti were presented as very reliable symptoms of Bhava. So one who is maybe showing some ecstatic symptoms of crying or shivering, we can gauge one's status by these symptoms. Or similarly, a devotee who's achieved Bhava Bhakti actually conceals these symptoms. But these 9 are very difficult to see, and they're actually observable traits. So Rupa Goswami presented that. So now, chapter 19. This is the 4th wave of the Eastern Ocean, and it is Krishna Prema. So Srila Prabhupada opens the chapter. The chapter is entitled Devotional Service in Pure Love of God. He says, when one's desire to love Krishna in one's particular relationship becomes intensified. This is known as pure love of God. So, Prema Bhakti is the matured and intensified state of bhava. And so actually the description here you see is quite short. We may think, wow, this is Prema Bhakti, there should be a long, but it is just an intensified state of Bhava Bhakti. Right? So the in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Madhya Lila, chapter 23, verse 7, Rupa Goswami also gives this, that when Bhava softens the heart completely, becomes endowed with a great feeling of possessiveness in relation to the Lord, and becomes very much condensed and intensified, it is called prema by learned scholars. So here we see some that in bhava bhakti the heart becomes soft, but in prema bhakti it becomes completely soft. Right? So we said last time bhava bhakti is the budding stage of prema, like when a flower buds, we know soon it will bloom. Just like the ray of sunlight, that when we see the rays of the sunlight in the morning, before we can see the sun is on its way. So once bhava manifests, prema bhakti is right behind it. We discussed this last time. But also the ray of sunlight is used by Rupa Goswami to compare bhava bhakti to prema bhakti. Right? If you compare the amount of heat in a sun ray to the amount of heat in the whole sun itself, there is heat, but the intensity is different. So the intensity of love in bhava is compared to the sun ray, whereas the intensity of love in Krishna prema is like the sun. So it's extraordinarily intensified, pure love. It is spontaneous and perfected, but the intensity is quite a bit stronger. So both have ecstatic love, bhava and prema, but the intensity is very strong in prema. And we can say that is Sanjanana Visheshatma. That was one of the characteristics of prema bhakti. It's so intense in the heart that nothing else manifests. Right? And so then Rupa Goswami quotes these verses from the Narada Pancharatra. It is stated that when lust is completely transferred to the Supreme Godhead, and the concept of kinship is completely reposed in him, such is accepted as pure love of God by great authorities like Bhishma, Prahlad, Uddhav, and Narada. So we see that love only applies to Krishna. That is the statement that is given here. There is no such thing as material love. It is only lust. Right? And then Srila Prabhupada gives this reference that there is a gulf of difference between love and lust, like the difference between gold and iron. Okay? And then a further reference is given here about Bhishma Pita's commentary. That great authorities like Bhishma have explained that love of God means completely giving up so-called love for any other person. According to Bhishma, love means reposing one's affection completely upon one person, without withdrawing all affinities for other persons. This pure love can be transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead under two conditions, which we'll speak about. So, we see that this love means exclusive devotion to Krishna, withdrawing all other love. Right? So, this happens because the happiness from one drop of Krishna prema does not compare to million times multiplied the happiness from liberation. Right? So this just a tiny fraction of happiness from Krishna prema is so extraordinary that it doesn't even compare to all the happiness of the world's multiplied millions and trillions of times. Right? We discussed this way back in chapter 1. So, we can try to imagine how strong this love is. That, we see the loving potency or, between child in mother, and mother has so much love for the child and is willing to serve endlessly and tirelessly. But that is only a fraction of the love that the devotee in Krishna Prema has for Krishna. So you can see how much more intensified it is in this state. So it's a very precise definition given by the great authorities, right? That it is exclusive love for Krishna. Prabhupada says again that only love can only be for Krishna. Bhishma Pita is explaining how, it can only, we withdraw love for everything else. Now, this comes to the, very important point that, wait a minute, if I awaken Krishna Prema, does that mean I stop loving, my family and other living entities and other society members? No, remember in the very beginning of the preface, Prabhupada commented that this loving propensity we all have, we must learn where to repose that love. But when we do, it is like watering the root of the tree, and it nourishes all branches. So when we learn to love Krishna, we actually then love all around us. But it's centered around Krishna consciousness. So our love for our family is to inspire them to also awaken their love for Krishna. So it does not mean that when we transfer, all of our affinity to Krishna, that we lose our care and concern and compassion. And we see that with Srila Prabhupada. He came and showered love to not only his family, to anybody. All in society. He was showering so much love. But he was fixed, of course, in Krishna Prema. So this is the position of Krishna Prema. Very exclusive, right? Giving up loving any other person and completely reposing one's affection upon Krishna. This is the status of Krishna Prema. Right? So how to achieve Krishna Prema? Srila Prabhupada comments on Rupa Goswami's comment that it can feel very high, very how I'll ever reach that platform. But we've studied this several times now. These 9 steps, right? It starts with Shraddha, some faith in the process. And that faith is what propels us from a very contaminated state to ultimately a purified, perfective state, right? With faith, we then begin to, associate with other devotees. And in association of devotees, we become inspired. Inspired to follow the process of bhajana kriya, performing the various acts of devotional service. And we discussed 64 principles of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Principle of which is to accept the shelter of a spiritual master, to accept initiation. So these are the most important steps. Right? So from bhajana kriya, by the practice of our regular principles, one becomes free from their anarthas, all the impurities of the heart. Remember, this is after this stage is when raganuga sadhana bhakti can take place. But when one becomes free from all the anarthas, then one can become fixed. Now I have all my desires in the heart are only towards Krishna. I don't have my material desires diluting the intensity of my effort. Thus one can become fixed, nishta. And in a fixed state, then one ultimately will taste the sweetness, the real sweetness of the holy names. And when this ruchi comes, this taste, it's so spectacular, so overpowering, so much more blissful than any other taste one has relished, that one becomes a shakti, addicted, attached. They cannot have enough of it, desiring millions of tongues and millions of ears to try to satiate this strong taste. And when that type of attachment, a shakti, occurs, there's this intense desire, then bhava bhakti can manifest. Remember, we said that one must strongly desire this position and be very intense. It's an overwhelming desire. And then bhava comes, and from bhava, prema. So it can seem like a long process, right? But where is Krishna lying within us? It is lying within our heart. Actually, our natural position is Krishna Prema. So it's not like we're trying to become a world-class cricketer and have never played cricket before. No, we're just trying to remember what we have forgotten. We have pure love within us. So while it may seem like some distant or difficult goal, we've had it, we have it dormant within our heart, and we simply have to awaken it. So to say it is impossible means we don't understand. Impossible means that it's not is in the fool's dictionary, Prabhupada used to say. Right? It's extraordinary process, and Rupa Goswami has been guiding us exactly how to awaken it, step by step. From Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti to Prema Bhakti, he has been giving us, right? And the main process to awaken this is by hearing. By hearing, we can awaken our desire to achieve Krishna Prema. Right? We can measure our progress by how intensely am I desiring to hear. What is my attraction to hear? By that, we can remove the anarthas and quickly move towards Krishna Prema. Right? So, through Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and drawing the inspiration from Guru, we can very quickly accelerate. And by surrender to Guru, we lose our pride and surrender to to Guru, and ultimately we'll learn to surrender to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada said, in this lifetime it can happen. And this is because of the extraordinary mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By simply chanting the holy names of the Lord, the most effective process in devotional service, one can achieve Krishna Prema in a moment if one has the purity and the intense desire and the humility. Okay? So by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Guru Parampara, this, steps to Krishna Prema can be had as quickly as we desire it, actually. So, and this is actually the goal of all austerity, of all penance, of all yoga. It is to awaken love of Krishna. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada says, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, it is a waste of time. So Krishna Prema is the ultimate goal. Otherwise, it is just a waste of time. We are celebrating Kartik Vrat and Kartik Mas. The purpose of celebrating and observing is to, as quickly as possible, awaken this pure love of God. So this is the process. Now, the characteristics of Krishna Prema. The primary characteristic is that it is an intensified state of Bhava Bhakti. As simply as we can put it. It is Bhava Bhakti on, exponentially multiplied. It is intensified Bhava Bhakti. And the secondary characteristic is that the heart is completely softened. It's initially softened in Bhava Bhakti to receive the Shuddha Sattva potency, this Haladini and Sambit Shaktis. But in Prema Bhakti, it is completely softened, which was defined as being moved by emotions, right? Very easily moved. And the second part is there is an intense feeling of possessiveness of Krishna. Now this is very unique. In initial bhakti or kind of ordinary devotional service, we see that I am Krishna's. There is this, I am Krishna's. But in Prema Bhakti, one develops this mood of Krishna is mine. And this only manifests in Prema Bhakti in Goloka Vrindavan. Not even in the Vaikuntha Loka. This idea of my Krishna, right? This is what happens in Prema Bhakti within Goloka Vrindavan. And we'll talk about the two different types of Prema Bhakti. But this is my son, my friend, my lover, right? And we saw, Mother Yashoda, how intently she was desiring to protect my son she was feeling. So this feeling of possessiveness is manifest and is one of the characteristics of Prema Bhakti. Right? So in Bhava Bhakti, we know the relationship with Krishna, whatever our eternal relationship is, but there is not yet the feeling of possessiveness. So this, eternal relationship with a friend or lover or in the Vatsalya rasa, but we don't have yet this possessiveness, and that's the distinction between Prema Bhakti and Bhava Bhakti. Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit more detail, some technical details. But there are two ways to achieve Prema. One is through the maturation of Bhava. By, Bhava maturing and coming through sadhana to Bhava, one can achieve Krishna Prema. And the second is directly achieving Prema by the extraordinary mercy of Krishna. And Srila Rupa Goswami gives the example of the gopis. They did no austerity or, tapasya or any Vaidhi sadhana bhakti devotional service. They attained the highest perfection directly by the mercy of Krishna. And if we remember, there were two ways to achieve Bhava Bhakti. One was by the mercy, and one was by sadhana bhakti. Right? So we've seen mercy can enter one at the Bhava stage, but it can also enter one directly at the Prema stage. But the more predictable and reliable path is for us to progress from sadhana bhakti to Bhava Bhakti to Prema Bhakti. So now, there's two ways or two types of Prema Bhakti. Right? So when we talk about the maturation from Bhava Bhakti, there are two paths that can be followed. The general overview path is Sadhana Bhakti leads to Bhava Bhakti, which leads to Prema Bhakti. Right? And we've been discussing that in detail, but now there are some important subdivisions to understand. Right? And the first is that by sadhana bhakti, we can either progress towards prema through Vaidhi sadhana bhakti or through Raganuga sadhana bhakti. So one is following the rules and regulations under the guidance of Guru and Scripture. Right? This is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. And this was from the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 40th verse, that the devotee develops natural Krishna consciousness through regulative principles of devotional service. By chanting, their heart softens and bhava emerges, and one arouses the bhava symptoms. Right? So this is achieving it through this Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. And the second way to achieve it is through Raganuga sadhana bhakti, through the spontaneous attraction. Right? And how does Raganuga sadhana bhakti develop? Taking us back several weeks ago, when there is an intense desire to follow in the footsteps of one of the Ragatmika devotees, the devotees in Vrindavan. Right? So this intense desire to follow in the footsteps, and that happens when one is free of all of their anarthas. Because until the anarthas are there, the desires are diluted. They are multi-pronged. So the undiluted intense desire happens after anartha nivritti. So there are two paths, again, Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. And Rupa Goswami quotes that from the Padma Purana, the example of Chandrakanti, meditated on having Krishna as her husband in this very spontaneous way, and thus she achieved this, prema through Raganuga Bhakti. So there are two categories of Bhava Bhakti, as we said. Again, one that comes directly from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and one that comes from Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And that leads to the two aspects of Prema Bhakti. Right? So now there are two types of Prema Bhakti. One is Mahatmya Jnana Prema, and the other is Kevala Prema. So when pure love, it is pure, but there is love tinged with an attraction to Krishna's opulence. This is what we see in Vaikuntha Lok. So there is a great veneration or appreciation of the greatness of the Supreme Lord, and that inspires one to love Krishna. Right? So on page 145, it says, if on account of profound veneration for the greatness of the Supreme Lord, one attains a great affection and steady love for him, one is certainly assured of achieving the four kinds of Vaishnava liberation. Right? So this is what takes one to Vaikuntha Loka, to live on the same planet, the opulences, have a similar form, and to be in close association. The four, of the five types of liberation. The fifth is never accepted by Vaishnavas, that of to merge into the Brahmin effulgence. So, from Vaidhi Bhakti, one can reach Krishna Prema, which is present in Vaikuntha planets, with this appreciation and attraction to the grand opulence of Krishna. So this is the Mahatmya Jnana Prema. And again, this comes through Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. We are awed by the opulence and greatness, and that is the inspiration that propels one to love. Now, from Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, one reaches Prema Bhakti at the aspect of Kevala Prema. And this is pure love with not even a slight attraction, no attention to Krishna's opulence or any other interest. Not even slightly interested in the opulence, doesn't wow them. The love of Krishna overwhelms any emotion of awe and reverence. And we see this in our Damodarastakam prayers, right? That not a slightest weakened, our love is not weakened by awe and reverence. So this is Kevala Prema. And this we see in Goloka Vrindavan. That the devotees, they know that Krishna is the Lord, but they don't know at the same time. By the potency of Yoga Maya, they forget and they treat Krishna. They love Krishna because he's Krishna, not because he's the Supreme Lord. He is Param Brahma, he is Purushottama, he is the source of all Brahma. No. They love him because he is so lovable. He is all attractive. And that is how Mother Yashoda can bind Krishna, or the cowherd boys can tease and make fun of Krishna. They even tease each other. Or the gopis will rebuke and chastise Krishna. Because their love is of pure love, not swayed by awe and reverence. Because if you appreciate the awe and reverence, you can bow to Krishna, you can glorify him, but you can't play with him or treat him like your child. Right? So these emotions arise when one has progressed to Krishna Prema through Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And that is the important one. That is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained in great detail this Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, to Bhava Bhakti, to Prema Bhakti. And the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada, their home is Goloka Vrindavan. That is the home he is offering. And the path that he showed by his own example, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Srila Prabhupada came to spread that message on the order of his Guru. Right? So this is the path that we can aspire to follow. And we should be very clear that there are two paths. Based on our desire, we have the free will to choose which it is that will attract us and inspire us in love. Both are in the perfected state. Both is pure love of Krishna and ecstasy, but there is a distinction. And one takes one towards Vaikuntha Lok and the other towards Goloka Vrindavan. So now just to conclude this, detecting Krishna Prema, Rupa Goswami speaks a little bit about it, that the material happiness and distresses doesn't register. There is no impact on the mood of the Prema Bhakta. So they don't perceive any external happiness or distress. So it can be difficult to see whether one is in Krishna Prema or not, because they are so overwhelmed by the transcendental emotions of love with Krishna that it doesn't happen. So Rupa Goswami is guiding that to understand more about Prema Bhakti and the detailed descriptions and how the affections occur and the different dealings. He is guiding one to take study of Sanatana Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita, who has presented this. And thus he ends this Eastern Ocean and the fourth wave by offering his pranams to his Guru Sanatana Goswami and all of the Goswamis, the prominent acharyas of this time. So I just wanted to conclude with two kind of final statements. The key principle we've learned in this Eastern Ocean by Rupa Goswami is that the rocket fuel for our success in devotional service is combining this humility and intense desire. You know, this hope against hope, that humble, along with a strong desire. I have to have it. I want it very badly. If we combine these two, our progress from Shraddha to Prema can happen very, very quickly. Right? So we must come to the point of begging and crying for Krishna, knowing we have no ability to do it on our own, but it only can come from Krishna's mercy. But almost to the point of expecting it. Krishna, you must give it to me, even though I am so fallen and unqualified. So that is the mood we can try to cultivate with our sadhana. Not a mechanical mood, but an intense, desirous mood with great humility. Knowing I don't deserve it, but Krishna is so kind, he is so loving, he will surely give it to me. That is the mood Rupa Goswami is presenting, and we can try to follow. He presented it right in the very beginning of the Nectar of Instruction, and it's carried throughout this study. So just to conclude the Raganuga Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti, just to, sometimes it can be a little bit confusing. So again, Raganuga Bhakti is the practice of spontaneous love. The impetus is internal, but it is practicing the spontaneous love. Whereas Bhava Bhakti is the perfected stage of spontaneous love in ecstasy. This ecstatic mood is manifested. So it is perfected, spontaneous, in ecstasy. And Prema Bhakti is intensified, spontaneous love in ecstasy. So just wanted to kind of conclude with just a summary of the three, because sometimes they can be a little bit confusing. We see spontaneity in all three. We obviously have different levels of happiness in all three. But again, Raganuga Bhakti is in the sadhana platform, whereas Bhava and Prema are in the perfected platform. And between Bhava and Prema, it is a matter of intensity. Okay? So this concludes our study of Nectar of Devotion, the Eastern Ocean. And I wanted to express my most sincere gratitude to His Grace Borijan Prabhu, whose lectures have been an extraordinary inspiration for me in studying this Nectar of Devotion. His lectures on this are just so exquisite and filled with so much nectar. So very, very grateful for his classes to inspire, and virtually everything that I have presented has been but a repeat of what he has said, to the extent I was able to. So very, very grateful. So thank you for your participation. Any questions or comments on this final chapter of the Eastern Ocean?
When one is in
Mataji, can you repeat your question? I'm sorry, the first part got cut off for me. I can hear you now, though.
okay. Basically, could you explain that part again? Like, how does one feel when one is in Krishna Prema? You said something about not perceiving external happiness or distress, right? That part, could you a little bit explain?
Yeah.
Like, how do we know that? Like, how do we know when one person is in Bhava Bhakti and one person is in Krishna Prema? I know you said intensified, but it's very hard to kind of measure and try to understand. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it will be perceived by anybody except Krishna, right? Who will know about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's on one hand, we understand by the position of certain devotees who is in Krishna Prema, like Srila Prabhupada, of course. But yeah, it's difficult to perceive. Is the point Rupa Goswami was making, and so we should be careful, one, not to judge, but we also may become drawn to the association and inspired and appreciative of one's position in bhakti. So Rupa Goswami again did present the 9 symptoms of Bhava Bhakti, right? And if you think about these 9 symptoms, you can start to see, exclusive focus on Krishna, right? Not liking to sit idle, this desire to be in Vrindavan, this, constantly glorifying the Lord, attraction to chanting. These are the symptoms that are hard to fake, but they're also observable. And then from there to prema, it's again an intensified state that is not observable, right? So, but we know if one is in Bhava Bhakti, they basically are right there at prema bhakti. It's just moments away, right? The step from Bhava to prema is very short. The step from Shraddha to Bhava is very long. Right? So we can in some way say there's little distinction between the two, though the experience is quite significant because the intensity grows many, many times. So that's kind of the understanding, and the point that about the material distresses and happiness is that one of the symptoms of bhava bhakti is this indifference to all material attachments. But this goes a little bit beyond that one is so overwhelmed in their ecstasy and their love of Krishna that the external happiness and distress doesn't affect them. There's no move in their consciousness. It doesn't register. Right? They're so overwhelmed in happiness by Krishna Prema that the world could be falling apart and they don't even realize it. To take just an extreme example. So that is the point. Is that okay, Mataji?
Yeah. So basically, in Bhava Bhakti, the one is indifferent to the happiness and distress, and in Prema Bhakti, one is so overwhelmed with love that it doesn't even register what's going on, right? I mean, indifference is when you know there is there, but you are being indifferent. But here you kind of doesn't even register. So that is the kind of distinction we will make.
Yeah, because yes, you can make that distinction. Again, one of the characteristics is, remember, that they persevere through obstacles, right? So in Bhava Bhakti, one still carries forward, but in Prema Bhakti, it doesn't even register, right? It doesn't even note. Whereas in Bhava Bhakti, we can say that, there may be some awareness, but it doesn't affect one. There's no, lamenting. There's no, oh, this is coming. But at least there's awareness. In Prema Bhakti, they're completely absorbed. It's like and we don't need to draw much of a line between Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti, to be honest. It's very, because again, we don't draw a line when the sun is rising, when it just crosses. It's right there. Right there we can understand, but there's the distinction in this intensity. So don't focus too much on trying to create a stark distinction. There's a bigger distinction between sadhana bhakti and bhava bhakti.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Prabhuji, I cannot hear you. Maybe your speaker is not. I'm seeing mentioned 4 names. Which 4 names? Oh, the 4 names who spoke about Krishna Prema. So this was Bhishma, Prahlad, Uddhav, and Narada. Bhishma name. Just at the end of the first paragraph in the book, those 4 are given. And just to be clear, not Bhim, but Bhishma name. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Hare Krishna.